I think there are two areas that are in a transitional stage. First is that there are some people who are taking the tunes from beautiful old hymns and laying new words on those tunes. So, for instance, John Bell with a song that's called "God Beyond Knowledge," that takes the da 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 da, and with the newer words, which would be "God beyond knowledge, yet close to us here." So familiar tunes that pretty much everybody knows and they can sing heartily, but with new words that really kind of push the boundaries and are, you know, I think, you know, really deep and profound. So that's one area. And the second is some of the work that's being done, some of the new compositions from John Philip Newell and a woman whose name is Linda Larkin. They are taking songs from different traditions, for instance, from the Quran, and setting them to music and doing that as a part of liturgy. So one of those would be like, whichever way you turn, whichever way you turn, whichever way you turn, there is the face of God. Like that. So a little more, you know, Middle Eastern sounding melodies with the, you know, text from the Quran, but as a part of the framework of our liturgy, and it's a beautiful combination. Pushes the edges a little bit for some folks. I did it recently at a service, and everybody was singing, you know, beautifully with great harmonies, and all of a sudden they looked at the thing, oh, that's from the Quran, huh? So we had this moment of, let's talk about that a little bit, you know. So two areas for me that are changing, pushing the boundaries a little bit.
To a globe in which the developing world is seeing a great increase in participation in liturgy, membership of church, discipleship, particularly in China. And if we're part of that international church, there should be badges, signs in our liturgy that we belong there. I think for much of my life I imagined that the only songs that the Southern Hemisphere had produced, in fact the only one that the Southern Hemisphere had produced was Kumbaya. We sang it all the time. Desmond Tutu came from South Africa, we sang Kumbaya in Glasgow. Bishop Ting came from China, St Mary's Cathedral, we sang Kumbaya. Archbishop Helder Camara came from Recife in Brazil, we sang Kumbaya. I met a man last year who'd been to Kumbaya. He says it's a mountain village in Venezuela and nobody knows the tune. But there's much more. Although my fingers might not manage it, I'd like to do a great psalm which has just come from William Ramirez, who's my Salvadorian friend. I am glad to be present in the house of God. I am glad to be welcomed by the living Lord. And I believe in the church because on my own I cannot feed the hungry or clothe the naked or evangelize the doubting or celebrate the mysteries of faith. Because Christianity is about commitment to discipleship as well as the comprehension of God's will and purposes, I cannot go it alone.
So Brer Lion, when he was first created, didn't say when he was first created and the animals were walking the earth, Brer Lion opened up his mouth and said, meow. And all the other animals thought it was hilarious. They would fall on the ground laughing whenever they saw that big animal and hear that little wimpy voice. And so they would ask him questions just so they could hear him talk in that voice. Hey, Brer Lion, what color's the sky? And he'd say, well, it's mostly gray, but I see some blue peeking through. And they would laugh. And Brer Lion was so frustrated because he knew there was a big voice inside of him, but he didn't know how to get it out. And so one day, Brer Rabbit said, hey, Brer Lion, I hear you want a big voice. Is it true? Yeah, that's all I want to know. Why world is a big voice to go to my big party? Brer Rabbit was laughing. Brer Rabbit said, okay, if you want a big voice, here's what you do. You go down the path until you get to the rock. And when you get to the rock, turn left and go off into the woods. And then listen, because you're going to hear a sound like this. And when you hear that sound, Lion, look on the ground. You're going to find a hollow tree, and inside there's going to be a honeycomb and sweet, delicious honey. Oh, there are going to be some bees, but don't worry about the bees. Just put everything in your mouth and chew it up and swallow it. And so when Lion heard that, he said, oh, and he jumped up and he ran down the path until he got to the rock. And when he got to the rock, he took a left off into the trees and he listened and he heard that sound. And he looked down on the ground and he saw the hollow tree and he looked inside and he saw the honeycomb and the honey and the bees. He was afraid of the bees, but he really wanted a big voice. So he took his paws and he reached in and he grabbed that honeycomb with the sweet honey and all those bees and he stuffed it in his mouth. And as soon as he did, the bees started to sting and bite. And it hurt so bad. Lion wanted to spit everything out of his mouth, but he kept remembering what the rabbit said. So even though smoke was coming out of his ears and water was pouring out of his eyes, he kept chewing and chewing and chewing. He swallowed everything, and after that, he was a changed cat. He walked back up the path and all the animals were waiting. Brer Rabbit had gathered everybody. Hey, Lion, come up here. Tell your story. We want to hear what happened to you when you went off into the woods. And so Brer Lion stood up in front of all the other animals. And Brer Lion said, well, wait a minute. Whose voice was that? Oh my goodness. Wow, that was me. And then he threw his head back and he let out the first mighty roar. And when the other animals heard that, they got down on their knees and they bowed. And that was the day Lion was made king of the animals. But we tell this old story in case you've ever been frustrated. Anybody ever been frustrated before? Well, there's an old story to remind you. If you've ever been frustrated, remember that lion. Because sometimes you might have to suffer through some pain and agony like those stinging bees, along with the sweet taste of honey, to get what you really, really want.